What's going on, everyone? For this week's video, I am continuing the Ghibli detour by diving into the stormy seas of another Ghibli classic, Ponyo. This diorama features the scene of the iconic storm leading up to Sosuke and Ponyo's heartfelt reunion. While researching this scene, I came across this awesome 3D rendering by Antoine Bassin off of sketchfab.com, and I was immediately inspired. I was lucky enough to find a 3D file of Ponyo off of sketchfab.com as well, though created by a different artist, Kiro.named. Links to both are in the description below. Now to prep, print, clip, and paint my Ponyo 3D print. Now let's create the waves using some insulation foam. Next, I'm going to create the armatures for the fish jumping out of the water, which I'll later on sculpt out of clay. To save on the clay, I'm using some aluminum foil to beef it up and to get a rough 3D outline of the fishies. Now I'm going to wrap up this armature with some smaller gauge aluminum wires to reinforce the shape that I've created. I'm using an oil-based clay called Monster Clay, which is the medium grade. Before using this, you'll need to warm it up in a microwave for a few minutes. Don't overdo it unless you want melted chocolate-like goop. I much prefer this type of clay compared to air dry or polymer. It is a lot more forgiving and makes it easy to add in fine details. This is my first time using this type of clay, and I'm definitely using this moving forward for all of my dioramas. Here I'm adding on some fins, the gills, and working in some fine details. Now let's secure these fishies into place with some hot glue. After which, I'm filling in the gaps with some additional clay. Since silicone rubber and insulation foam don't play nicely together, I'm going to lay down a layer of Vaseline to seal the foam and to also use as a release agent. For the clay fishies, I'm using a mold release lubricant made by Apple to help with the demolding process. This isn't really necessary, but I read that it helps, so why the hell not? For the silicone rubber, I'm using this brand called Unicorn Art. The directions call for equal parts in weight, not volume. I'm no science geek, but I don't get why they can be different, but I follow the directions anyways. Now, let's mix this questionably milky goop up. I'm actually mixing up two batches. The initial batch is a thinner batch, which I'm laying down to get into all of the nooks and crannies. The next batch, I'm adding a thickening agent made by Divex to make a more viscous goop, which will make it a lot easier to glop on without turning it into a puddle at the base of the model. You'll want to stir and test like so to get your desired consistency. After letting it cure for a day, let's remove the excess fruit by the foot silicone to save for later on as a poisonous snack. Now for the first moment of truth, demolding. Let's pray that it's okay. I had to really get in there. It felt like I was delivering fish babies from this mold. After sealing up the zigzag C-section style cuts with more silicone rubber, I'm going to apply some plaster cloth to create a cast-like exoskeleton to help with this thing, to keep its shape during the resin pour. Now time for the resin pouring and mixing. This is a 3-to-1 mix. For this diorama, I needed roughly 60 ounces of resin. Now let's mix in some blue paint. I haven't had much luck with deep pours, so I went out and got a vacuum pot. This is a time lapse of what it looks like inside the pot. And here are the finished results. It looks so clear. Now let's reintroduce some bubbles into this mold by sloppily pouring it in. I do have a torch on hand to blast away those bubbles. Hopefully they stay away. I had a big brain moment and thought it was a good idea to pour resin on one of the hottest days of the year. It got too hot during the pour and as a result bubbled over in some parts. I'm hoping I can fix this with some elbow grease and mechanical sanding later on. Now let's operate on the patient and remove his cast. I initially set out to try and preserve this mold should I need to recast the resin, but then quickly realized that that was not going to be a tenable solution. This felt like butchering fat off an animal. if that animal is made out of plastic. Less blur would potentially ruin this whole thing by adding in weight details with a Dremel. After that was done, I'm using some Flitz polish to smooth things out a bit. Like my previous Ghibli installment, I'm using Krylon's triple thick crystal clear glaze to add some shine to this thing. After letting it dry for a day, time to bring it inside for some finishing touches. I'm using some UV resin to glue Ponyo on top of one of these fishies. And that concludes my video. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. If you aren't subscribed, please do. Drop a note in the comments section and let me know what you thought of Ponyo and this diorama. What other Ghibli scenes should I do? If you missed it, be sure to check out my Spirited Away train diorama. And since you're here, check out my other diorama builds by clicking here and here. Thanks, see you next time.